Making it last is all I care to do. You loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life, won't live in the past. All I wanna do now is making it last. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends forever, strengthening the ties that keep us together.
It's time for another conversation. Welcome to Make It Last podcast. I'm your host, Noreen Diller. It's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, but with other people. We're going to be talking about emotional intelligence today with an emotional intelligence expert, Dr. Irvine Nugent. He describes himself as the expert on that and also an author. The name of his book, Leadership Blessings from the Pub. Welcome, Irvine.
Noreen, thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Before we get into the conversation, tell us a little bit about that book, Leadership Blessings from the Pub, and why that particular title.
Yes. So I grew up in Northern Ireland at a time during the Troubles, as we like to call them. My generation is called a child of the Troubles. It impacted my family very much. But one of the things, that I understood is that it placed in my heart a desire that humanity could do better, that conflict was not inevitable, and that we can build bridges and not walls. And there was something special that happened in that pub, that I saw that people formed community, that conversations were happening. People called it their local, and people were vulnerable. You didn't have to be perfect. You could go there with your warts and all and share, what had gone wrong with the day. And I said, you know what? Leaders and the workplace have a lot to learn from this space. And that's really the book came from.
Okay. And also you classify yourself as an emotional intelligent expert. Why?
So very much from my background and training, I have done a lot of work both in the research of emotions themselves and then some very specialized work that you normally might not associate with emotional intelligence, how to read people's emotions in their face, how to read suppressed emotions in people's faces. And so a lot of my body of work is around this. My doctorate focused on leadership under the times of stress. And it's the focus of my training and the focus of what I speak about.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. So it's a nice segue then, because the fact is any relationship, whether it is workplace, family, social relationship, whatever it is, obviously emotions come into play.
Absolutely.
So what we're going to be talking about is what is emotional intelligence and how can it be applied?
Yeah.
So what is emotional intelligence?
So the way that I like to explain emotional intelligence is very practical. People who are highly emotional intelligent are able to do four things very well. First of all, they have self-awareness. They know what emotion they are feeling when it arises, and they know what triggers them emotionally. Secondly, they have tools. So whenever they have an emotion that perhaps may be deconstructive, may not be helpful, they have tools to manage emotions in the moment. The third thing is they're able to read people. When a person walks into the road, they're able to get the room. They're able to get a sense of what that person's feeling. They're able to read people's faces and have empathy to connect. And then the last thing is they're able to manage relationships through conflict, through decision making, and use all of that for a positive outcome or an outcome that they're looking for, no matter what the conversation.
All right. Before we get into these different elements, though, if it is, and in your other life you teach, so if it is that somebody says, "What is emotional intelligence?" You had to just write that down. What would that be? Because you just included what is it people would have to.
So emotional intelligence is the ability to read, is the ability to be self-aware, self-regulate, to have other awareness, and to manage relationships.
I know you've been enjoying the conversation, but we're going to take a little break and get a word from our sponsor. So, the whole idea of a branding strategy sounded so exotic and so fancy to me. But After having several conversations with Neon, I now have a clearer understanding. I am sure of what my identity is, what it is that I want people to see Noreen Daly as. Thanks, Neon. Thanks, Splint. Visit them at wearesplint.com.
So with that being said, let's take them step by step.
Yeah.
The whole idea then of being self-aware means what? Because somebody might say, yes, that is self-explanatory,
but it's not.
Okay.
So often, what I find is when people talk about their emotions and you say, how are you feeling? A lot of people will say, well, I think I am. And that's very interesting. I think I am. Well, what does that mean? You see, our emotions are incredible because our emotions give us messages of what's happening. And very often our emotions begin in our bodies. So people who are self-aware are first of all aware physiologically what's happening in their body. They know that something has stirred them. They have a language around emotions. So very often I say people have an emotional literacy. So, you ask some people, how are you feeling? Well, I'm angry or I'm sad or I'm happy. And they have a nuance. I'm furious. I'm about to explode or I'm a little miffed. So they can sense how strong the emotion is. And then finally, there's a term that I use called trigger print. It looks like your fingerprint. You have a trigger print, which is unique to you as a human being and to me. And so what triggers us emotionally? Because that's really useful knowledge to have.
How then do you think this makes people better in their relationships? For want of a better word.
Yeah, well,
The fact that you're so self-aware.
Well, just imagine, say you're in a relationship, say a friendship or whatever, and say someone just annoys you. Someone has you're able to press your buttons. Well, to know, first of all, that, this conversation is going to get into a place where perhaps I'm going to be emotionally provoked. And to be able to prepare that, to be able to say, if I'm going into a difficult conversation, this so often when we have a conversation that's difficult, we think, what am I going to say? I'm going to go over the words I'm going to use. But very often we don't say to ourselves, what emotions might come up? And how am I going to manage those emotions? And how will I know I'm in that emotion? And that just adds another layer to helping us communicate.
It's a nice segue then, because one of the things you said is that you have tools, which would mean just knowing what then is appropriate for a particular context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's use an emotion, say like anger, which is very common. So what do you do when you're angry in the moment? Do you have, so one of the tools that I teach, I'll just give you an example, a practical example, it's called a 7-second reset. So when you're in the midst of a situation where you've noticed, you know what, I'm a little triggered here. I might say something I'm going to later regret. Let me just reset. And so part of that is putting your feet on the ground for 1 second, breathing in for seconds 2, 3, and 4, knowing as you breathe in, what's happening in your body, and then breathing out for the last 3 seconds and just having a little reset, adjusting your posture or whatever. And that time gives you the option to respond. So in other words, we're being thoughtful in a response instead of being reactive. And it's that reactivity that leads us down the road of saying or doing something we regret.
That is so true. That is so true. The whole idea then of reading people's emotions. Yeah. Tell us about that some.
So through research, we know that it used to be thought that emotions were all cultural. Now we know that there are actually 7 universal emotions, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what culture, the gender of the person, the age, those emotions will show in the face in the same way. And it's easy to begin. Now, some it comes naturally to us, like sadness. We know that sadness is a turning down of the lips, but also the inner eyebrows raise, and that's a sign of genuine sadness. So the ability to notice these things gives us, again, data. It gives us, wow, I'm dealing with someone here who's sad, or I'm dealing with someone who is feeling fear or happiness or disgust. And it's not that we're saying, aha, I've caught you out. This is what you're feeling. It's really just saying, okay, that's information that's going to inform the way I'm going to have a conversation with you, or what question I might ask.
Do you think, though, that this ability, when it is that somebody has acquired this ability, that it can actually be used to manipulate relationships, or is this all positive, or should be all positive?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, our emotions can absolutely be manipulated, and we can, people can prey upon other people. and etc. So
Mhm.
always we have to be careful in any relationship. But yes, there is a dark side to emotional intelligence. It can absolutely be used in dark ways.
How then do we best manage the relationships then to ensure that we're fostering healthy relationships?
So I think, one of the things that I find emotionally intelligent people do very well is that they have healthy boundaries. Sometimes we can think of emotional intelligence as, oh, I'm just so empathetic and I listen all the time and I'm totally available. That's unhealthy all the time. And so what I find is that because you're able to read some people, you get a sense of there's something wrong here in this, or I need to be careful because this person, I'm doubting their genuineness or what they're in this for. And so it's this ability to say no, because so often we've trouble saying no and we say yes all the time. And actually good emotional intelligence is those boundaries that, I need to protect myself and it's okay to do that.
It's interesting you should say that, because just literally yesterday, I was having a text conversation with a friend of mine and she said, you probably need to get a personal number so that when you put your phone down, you put work down.
Yeah.
Because what has happened now is that my number, sometimes my students have it, my colleagues have it, so that the line is blurred. So it's interesting that you should have that whole idea of boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting.
And Noreen, what you bring up is a massive problem since the pandemic of this inability to distinguish between work and home and people just prying into unrealistic expectations of availability, all of that. And it takes a little bit of strength. It's kind of like I've many clients who just let it get out of hand. And it's like, okay, we just need to step back and create healthy boundaries again.
I know you've been enjoying the conversation, but we're going to take a little break and get a word from our sponsor.
Photography is an art, but more so, photography must come from the heart. Precious moments, priceless times. Take a pic and it will turn out fine. For beautiful captures, email us at bmcphotographyja@gmail.com or call us at 876-350-7089. BMC Photography JA. Beautiful moments captured.
Well, you said a lot, but with all of this, and we've touched a little bit on how it can be applied, but just right across the board, how would you then suggest to individuals that they exhibit or try to apply this whole idea of emotional intelligence?
So I would say, first of all, a mindset. I'd say, first of all, there's a mindset, and the mindset is curiosity. To be curious about other people and to be curious as people show up, and to realize that we don't always know the full story and that we come with our biases and they're at play as well. So to be able to have the spirit of genuine interest and curiosity, I think is really important. And then it's the humility to realize that we don't always get it right. And emotional intelligence as well is always about reflection. So in other words, just say we're in an argument, we say something that like, oh, why did I say that? I just regret it. And then to use that situation to reflect, what happened there? Why did I get angry? What was the trigger? What can I learn from this? How can I learn not to repeat that in the future? And that's what I those two mindsets are incredibly important. And I think very emotionally intelligent people have them with abundance.
As we're wrapping up, is there anything, well, it's going to be a two-part question, but is there anything regarding emotional intelligence that you'd like to share before we end?
The great thing about emotional intelligence is it doesn't matter what age you are in life, there's an opportunity to grow and develop. One hopes as one grows through life and has more experiences, it develops, but there's always an opportunity today to grow your emotional intelligence, which is a wonderful thing. We're never too old to start.
Okay. Final question. If then you had to sum all of this up in terms of the whole idea of applying emotional intelligence, and you had to sum it up in a 3 or maybe a 4-step process, what would that process be?
Check in with yourself, make that a
Mhm.
habit. Be reflective about any situation that you're going into.
Okay.
Be aware, reflect more on the other than what you are
Okay.
going to say,
Okay.
and be observant of what happens during the conversation.
Love that. Excellent note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing, Irvine.
Thanks, Noreen, for the invitation.
This was Make It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, with other people. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next time.
Making it last is all I care to do. You loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives,